In the dense forests that blanketed the northern ridges, where ancient trees whispered secrets through their gnarled branches, a subtle disturbance broke the harmony of the wilderness. It was nearing dusk, the sky painting itself in shades of orange and purple as the sun retreated behind the mountains. Amidst the tall grasses and underbrush, a figure lay motionless. She was a creature of grace and mystery, a fox with fur as white as the first snow of winter and eyes like polished sapphire. Her sides heaved with shallow breaths, the only sign she was more than just a casualty of the wild. A crude trap had snapped around her hind leg, the metal teeth biting deep, tinting her fur with a stark contrast of crimson. Her name was Alara, and she was no ordinary fox. Among her kin, she was known as the Silent Whisper, revered for her ability to move like a ghost through the woods and revered for her wisdom. However, her current plight showed that even the wisest were not immune to the follies of fate. As night began to cloak the sky, Alara's hope dwindled. Her leg throbbed painfully with each heartbeat, and the metallic scent of her own blood mingled with the earthy aromas of the forest floor. Her thoughts wandered to her den, to the warm embrace of her family she might never see again, when suddenly a new scent cut through the evening air, a mixture of paper, ink, and something uniquely human. Tom, a young student from the nearby university, often wandered the forest to clear his mind and seek solace from the academic pressures. His path that evening was aimless, guided only by the need to escape the clutter of equations and theories that shackled his thoughts during the day. He was no stranger to the woods, yet tonight, something felt different. An inexplicable pull in his chest led him deeper into the forest, away from the well-trodden paths. His feet rustled through the underbrush, and his handheld flashlight cast eerie shadows among the twisting trunks. Then he stopped. His light had caught something unusual, a hint of white against the dark soil. Curiosity edged by concern, Tom approached cautiously. The sight that greeted him was both beautiful and heartbreaking. A white fox, caught and bleeding, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and pain. Instinctively he knelt beside her, keeping his distance to avoid startling her further. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," Tom murmured, his voice a soothing whisper against the crisp evening air. Alara's instinct urged her to flee, but her body refused to cooperate. She watched him, her breaths quick and shallow, as he slowly reached into his backpack. What he retrieved was unexpected. A small toolkit. With careful hands, Tom worked on the trap, his fingers nimble yet firm. The mechanism was foreign to him, but his determination was fueled by the fox's evident suffering. After a tense few minutes, the trap gave way, and Alara's leg was free, though the damage was severe. Gently, Tom wrapped her injured leg with a clean cloth from his pack, his actions tender. "I'll take you somewhere safe," he promised, lifting her carefully. Alara, overwhelmed by pain and exhaustion, could do nothing but lay her head against his arm, her body trembling. As they moved through the darkness, Tom's thoughts raced. He needed to get her help, but more than that, he felt an unspoken bond forming between them. This night, this encounter, was not merely a chance event. It felt like destiny. The walk back to his car was quiet, save for the rustling of leaves and Alara's soft whimpers. Once inside, he turned up the heat to comfort her and drove towards the town, where he knew a veterinarian who could help, even at this late hour. As the car hummed along the road, Tom looked over at the fox, her fur bathed in the soft glow of the dashboard lights. "You're going to be okay," he said softly, more to reassure himself than her. This was just the beginning, and somehow he knew that their paths were now irrevocably intertwined. The veterinarian's clinic was a beacon of fluorescent light against the deepening night. As Tom carried Alara inside, the door chimed gently, alerting Dr. Amanda Green of their arrival. Dr. Green, known for her expertise in wildlife rehabilitation, was quick to usher them into the examination room. "What do we have here?" she asked, her tone professional yet warm as she donned her examination gloves. "A fox caught in a trap," Tom explained, gently setting Alara onto the padded examination table. She's hurt pretty badly. Dr. Green's eyes softened as she examined Alara, her hands skilled and gentle. The fox, though clearly in pain, seemed to understand that this human meant to help her. Dr. Green carefully cleaned the wound, murmuring words of comfort that transcended the barrier between species. Her leg is badly injured, but with proper care she should recover. I'll need to set the bone and stitch the wound, Dr. Green informed Tom, preparing the necessary medical supplies. You can stay if you like. It seems she trusts you, and that will help keep her calm. Tom nodded, grateful for the opportunity to stay by Alara's side. As Dr. Green worked, he kept a steady, soothing dialogue with the fox, who listened with an intensity that suggested she understood more than any ordinary animal. After the procedure, Dr. Green bandaged Alara's leg and administered some pain relief. "She'll need to be kept warm and quiet. Can you take her home with you?" she asked Tom. Without hesitation, Tom agreed. He prepared a makeshift bed in his living room, ensuring everything was perfect for Alara's recovery. Over the following weeks, Tom's apartment became a sanctuary for Alara. He balanced his studies with caring for her, often reading his textbooks aloud while she rested. Surprisingly, Alara showed a keen interest in his studies, particularly when he discussed environmental science and wildlife conservation. One evening, as Tom recounted the tragic impact of human encroachment on wildlife habitats, Alara fixed him with a look so intense it almost seemed she was about to speak. Compelled by a sudden inspiration, Tom fetched a notepad and sketched diagrams of ecosystems and biodiversity, explaining each concept. Alara watched, her eyes following every movement of his pen. During these sessions, Tom felt a profound connection with Alara, as if they were both students and teachers in their unique classroom. He began to wonder if Alara was indeed a regular fox or something more, perhaps a creature of folklore or magic. As Alara's strength returned, so did her spirit. She became more active, exploring every corner of Tom's apartment with a quiet curiosity. Occasionally she would pause and stare out the window, her gaze distant and thoughtful, as if she longed for the forest yet appreciated the safety of her current refuge. Tom realized that soon, the day would come for Alara to return to her natural habitat. The thought filled him with a bittersweet ache. He had grown to care for her deeply, not just as a creature in need, but as a friend, a companion who had silently taught him about resilience and the unseen threads connecting all living beings. One crisp morning, as Tom watched the sunrise, Alara joined him by the window. Together they watched the sky turn from soft gray to a burst of gold and pink. It was a silent agreement between them, a shared moment that spoke of healing and the inevitable farewell that was to come. But for now, they had today, and Tom was determined to make every moment count, learning and growing together in this unexpected journey of companionship and discovery. As autumn gave way to the chilling winds of winter, the bond between Tom and Alara deepened, woven with threads of shared silences and unspoken understandings. With Alara's recovery nearly complete, Tom sensed the time for her return to the wild was drawing near. Yet an unexplained reluctance tugged at his heart, a feeling that there was still much to be uncovered about his mystical companion. One evening, as the first snowflakes of the season fluttered against the window pane, Alara seemed unusually restless. She paced the room, her gaze occasionally fixed on Tom with a sense of urgency. It was on this night that the extraordinary nature of Alara began to truly unfold. Sitting beside the fireplace, Tom observed her behavior, his curiosity piqued. He decided to engage her in a different manner. Pulling out a series of wildlife books, he began to read aloud about mythical creatures, legends of intelligent beasts and guardians of the forest. As he spoke, Alara's agitation seemed to ease, and she settled down, her eyes locked on his with an intensity that made his spine tingle. Midway through a legend about fox spirits known as kitsune, known in folklore for their intelligence and magical abilities, Alara moved closer, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. The air around her seemed to thrum with an unseen energy. Heart racing with a mix of fear and fascination, Tom continued to read, his voice growing steadier with each word. As he reached the part of the tale where the kitsune reveals its true nature to a worthy human, Alara's eyes shimmered, and the room filled with a soft, ethereal light. The air seemed to pulse with the gentle beat of nature itself. Tom, overwhelmed by the unfolding magic, watched in awe as Alara's form shimmered, and for a brief moment, an ethereal figure appeared, a beautiful creature with 9 tails, wrapped in a cloak of whispering winds and emerald leaves. The vision lasted only seconds before Alara returned to her familiar fox form, but the room remained charged with a magical residue. Tom, struggling to comprehend the encounter, knew then that Alara was no ordinary fox. She was a creature of legend, a guardian of the forest. "Alara, you're a kitsune." Tom's voice was a mix of wonder and disbelief. Alara approached him, her expression solemn, and for the first time Tom heard her voice, not through spoken words, but as a clear, melodious thought that filled his mind. "Yes, Tom. In your care, I have found trust and healing. In return, I have much to share and teach about the wonders and woes of our world." The revelation set the course for new, deeper conversations between them. Alara began to share her wisdom about the natural world, teaching Tom about the delicate balances that sustain life, the unseen forces that govern nature, and the mystical entities that tread quietly beside the oblivious hustle of human life. Their nights became filled with discussions about conservation, the spiritual essence of nature, and the responsibilities of those who tread both in the mundane and the mystical realms. Tom, with his background in environmental science, found a new purpose in his studies, now driven not just by academic interest but by a profound duty to protect and understand the natural world as Alara saw it. As winter deepened and the time approached for Alara to return to her realm, Tom prepared for their parting with a mix of sadness and gratitude. They decided that her release would coincide with the winter solstice, a time of magical significance when the veil between the earthly and the ethereal is thinnest. As they stood in the forest clearing under the starlit sky of the solstice night, Tom felt the magic of the moment envelop him, a gentle affirmation of the unbreakable bond they had forged. It was a farewell, but not an end. It was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, inspired by the mystical fox who had wandered, wounded, into his world. In the aftermath of Alara's departure, the world seemed to Tom both emptier and yet more full of potential. The forest where he had released her into the wild once again held an air of sacred silence, charged with the latent energies of the solstice night. He found himself visiting these woods often, drawn by the lingering presence of Alara's spirit, feeling her in the whisper of the wind and the rustle of leaves. As the weeks turned into months, Tom channeled his profound experience into his academic pursuits. He designed a thesis project focused on the coexistence of human developments and wildlife sanctuaries, inspired by the teachings of the kitsune. His professors, intrigued by his unique approach and newfound passion, supported his fieldwork, which sought to bridge scientific understanding with ecological spirituality. Tom's research led him to remote areas, studying different habitats and the impacts of human interference on wildlife. He used a combination of traditional scientific methods and a more intuitive approach, often sitting in silent observation for hours, a technique he learned from Alara. Through these methods, Tom began to document subtle changes in the environment that others might overlook, such as shifts in animal behavior patterns and signs of hidden presences that influence the ecosystem. One evening, while reviewing data in his makeshift field office, a small cabin on the edge of a national park, Tom stumbled upon a series of anomalies in his recordings. The data hinted at a presence in the woods, a guardian spirit similar to a kitsune, affecting the ecological balance. Eager to explore this possibility further, he set up cameras and recording equipment in various parts of the forest. Days later, when reviewing the footage, Tom caught glimpses of ethereal figures, fox-like entities that appeared briefly at dawn and dusk, their forms shimmering with an otherworldly light. Excited by the discovery, he expanded his research to include local folklore, interviewing elders in nearby communities who spoke of the forest guardians in reverent tones. These narratives matched the phenomena Tom observed, weaving a rich tapestry that connected his scientific findings with the mystical. Motivated by these encounters, Tom organized a series of community workshops. He shared his findings, blending ecological data with cultural stories to foster a deeper appreciation and respect for the natural world. These workshops quickly grew in popularity, attended by locals, environmentalists, and curious visitors. Tom used this platform to advocate for sustainable living practices and the protection of wildlife habitats, emphasizing the interconnectedness of all life forms. As his reputation grew, Tom was invited to speak at conferences and seminars where he presented his unique perspective on environmental conservation. His approach, which combined empirical science with an acknowledgement of the spiritual dimensions of nature, resonated with many, sparking new initiatives aimed at integrating these concepts into mainstream environmental policies. One late autumn day, while walking through the forest where he had last seen Alara, Tom felt a familiar presence. There, in a clearing bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, stood Alara, her coat as luminous as ever, her eyes reflecting deep knowledge and pride. "You have done well, Tom," her voice echoed in his mind, a melodious sound that filled him with warmth. "Your journey has just begun. Remember, every step in nurturing the earth nurtures your own spirit." With those words, Alara turned and vanished into the forest, leaving behind a trail of shimmering light. Tom stood there, a smile spreading across his face, knowing that while their paths might diverge, their mission was united, echoing through the trees and across the world. Tom's journey, now intertwined with a sense of purpose that transcended conventional conservation efforts, evolved into a pioneering crusade to redefine humanity's relationship with nature. His experiences with Alara had not only provided a foundation of knowledge, but also imbued him with a sense of duty to act as a bridge between the mystical and the material worlds. In the spring that followed, Tom launched a groundbreaking project dubbed Echoes of the Forest. The initiative aimed to create bioreserves where ecological practices were influenced by both scientific research and spiritual insights about the land. These reserves were designed to be living laboratories, places where people could learn about sustainable interactions with nature, guided by the principles Tom had learned from his time with Alara. The first of these reserves was established on the outskirts of the national park, where Tom had first connected with the kitsune spirit. Here, he integrated advanced ecological monitoring systems with areas designated for meditation and spiritual reflection, encouraging visitors to experience and respect the mystical aspects of nature. Tom also introduced an innovative program within the reserves called Whispers of the Wild, which consisted of guided tours that combined traditional ecological education with stories of the land's guardian spirits, based on local folklore. These tours were led by guides trained by Tom to sense and respect the subtle energies of the forest, offering a unique blend of ecological and spiritual insights. To further his cause, Tom collaborated with environmental NGOs and tech companies to develop an app that allowed users to record and share their encounters with wildlife, along with any unusual phenomena they experienced in nature. The app used augmented reality to overlay folklore stories onto real-world locations, making each visit to the reserves an interactive and educational experience. This approach helped bridge the gap between generations, making environmental education appealing to both young and old. As Echoes of the Forest gained popularity, Tom's efforts caught the attention of international conservation groups. He was invited to forums and think tanks around the world, where he presented his model of integrating folklore and ecology. His talks inspired other countries to explore similar projects, adapting them to their local cultural contexts and ecological needs. However, the path was not without challenges. Skepticism from traditionalists in both the scientific and conservation communities posed significant hurdles. Some criticized Tom's methods as unscientific or too esoteric, arguing that conservation should be based on empirical data alone. In response, Tom organized symposiums that brought together scientists, spiritual leaders, and conservationists, fostering dialogue that led to a broader understanding of his integrative approach. Amidst his expanding influence, Tom never lost his personal connection to the reserves. He often spent nights in the forests, sometimes catching glimpses of ethereal figures in the twilight, reminding him of Alara's presence and approval. On one such evening, While Tom was walking through a newly established reserve, he felt a sudden chill and saw a faint glow between the trees. Following it, he found himself at a small clearing where the air vibrated with magical energy. There, he saw not just one but several kitsune, their forms shimmering under the moonlight. "You have spread the message well, Tom," a voice filled his mind, warm and familiar. It was Alara, now accompanied by other spirits of the forest. "Continue on this path, and know that we are always here, guardians not just of the forest, but of the bond between all worlds." Renewed with purpose and backed by the unseen forces of the forest, Tom returned to his work with a deeper commitment. His story had begun with a wounded fox and evolved into a global movement, proving that sometimes the most profound changes begin with a single act of kindness. The impact of Tom's Echoes of the Forest initiative had rooted deeply not just in his home country, but also across the globe, sprouting branches that stretched from the Americas to the hidden forests of Asia and the ancient woodlands of Europe. Each of these bioreserves, while tailored to the local environment and culture, shared the common goal of harmonizing ecological science with the mystical stewardship of nature. Tom's commitment to this global network of reserves, which he now referred to as the Global Nexus for Mystical Conservation, involved a detailed, hands-on approach in each location. He traveled extensively, ensuring that each new reserve maintained the core principles of his vision while adapting to local traditions and ecological challenges. In Brazil, Tom worked with Amazonian tribes to establish a reserve that incorporated indigenous knowledge and shamanic practices into its management. The reserve became a model of biodiversity conservation, protecting endangered species and sacred sites, while also providing a sanctuary for spiritual practices that honored the spirits of the forest, believed by the tribes to be akin to his kitsune. In Japan, the concept resonated with the ancient beliefs in kami and yokai, spirits inhabiting natural features and creatures. Here, Tom collaborated with Shinto priests to create a reserve where people could learn about the spiritual significance of nature intertwined with cutting-edge conservation techniques. The reserve was designed around sacred groves and streams, each cared for in a way that respected both the ecological and spiritual value of the landscape. Meanwhile, in Scandinavia, a reserve was established focusing on the revival of Norse myths connected to the natural world. Tom introduced programs that taught about the spirits of the forest and the sea, akin to the elves and trolls of folklore, integrating these stories with modern environmental science to protect the fragile ecosystems of the Nordic forests and fjords. Each reserve operated a visitor center that provided educational programs blending virtual reality and augmented reality technologies with real-world experiences. These programs allowed visitors to see the effects of their actions on the environment through a mystical lens, visualizing how positive behaviors could bolster the health of the forest and its unseen guardians. Back home, Tom established a research institute dedicated to studying the interfaces between ecological science, technology, and mystical traditions. The institute attracted scholars, mystics, environmentalists, and technologists eager to explore new ways to live in harmony with the planet. This think tank became a breeding ground for innovative ideas that were then tested and implemented in the reserves. As the network grew, so did the challenges. The expanding influence of the global nexus drew scrutiny from economic interests threatened by the conservation efforts. Logging companies, mining corporations, and some governmental bodies pushed back against the reserves, citing economic drawbacks. Tom faced these challenges head-on, using a mix of diplomacy, public engagement, and legal defenses to protect the lands. He leveraged the growing public interest in mystical conservation, organizing global forums that showcased the success of the reserves in preserving biodiversity and cultural heritage. These forums highlighted how the reserves not only protected the environment, but also boosted local economies through ecotourism and educational programs. Amidst this whirlwind of activity, Tom received an unexpected message: a sighting of a kitsune in a remote area of Mongolia, an area not yet under the protection of the global nexus. This news spurred him to embark on an expedition, pushing the boundaries of the network further into the vast steppes of Central Asia. As Tom prepared for his journey, The promise of encountering another kitsune brought a renewed sense of wonder and purpose. Each step forward was a step deeper into the interconnected web of life, a journey not just through the physical world, but through the layers of myth and reality that shaped it. Tom's journey to the remote expanses of Mongolia was driven by more than the pursuit of expanding the global nexus. It was a quest for deeper understanding, a quest that might reveal the true breadth and depth of the mystical world he had only begun to explore. Upon arriving in Mongolia, Tom teamed up with Altan, a local conservationist and shaman who had contacted him about the kitsune sighting. Altan was deeply respected in his community for his knowledge of both the spiritual and natural landscapes of the steppes. His belief that the spiritual health of the land was directly linked to its ecological well-being resonated strongly with Tom's vision. Together, they ventured into the vast undulating plains of Mongolia, a land where the earth met the sky in an endless horizon. The landscape was stark, the winds sculpted the grasses, and the sounds of nature were almost amplified in the expansive openness. Altan introduced Tom to the concept of the Tengeri, the spirits of the sky, which he believed were closely related to the kitsune, serving as guardians of the vast skies and the rolling steppes below. He explained that the recent sighting of the kitsune might be a sign of the Tengeri's displeasure with human encroachments into sacred areas, an issue that had escalated with the increase in mining activities. Their first stop was a small village where the sighting had occurred. Here, Tom and Altan conducted a series of interviews with the locals, gathering stories of recent interactions with what they described as a light-footed spirit that danced on the wind. These tales painted a picture of a creature deeply woven into the fabric of the local mythology, revered as a protector of the wild spaces. Eager to capture evidence of the kitsune, Tom set up an array of sensors and cameras around the area where the most recent sightings had been reported. Each night, they camped under the stars, the cold, crisp air filled with the anticipation of a mystical encounter. After several nights, their patience bore fruit. The sensors picked up unusual thermal signatures, and the cameras captured fleeting images of a creature that glowed with an ethereal light, its form fluid and graceful against the stark backdrop of the steppes. Armed with this evidence, Tom and Altan organized a community meeting. They presented their findings, linking the appearance of the kitsune with the need to protect certain sacred areas from exploitation. Tom shared insights from his global network, illustrating how spiritual respect for nature could harmonize with ecological conservation to benefit both the environment and the local communities. Motivated by the discussions, the village elders agreed to work with Tom and Altan to establish a new bioreserve. This reserve would not only protect the physical habitat, but also serve as a cultural sanctuary where the traditions of the Tengeri and the reverence for the kitsune could be preserved and passed down to future generations. As the project took shape, Tom stayed in Mongolia to oversee the initial stages of the reserve's development. He worked closely with Altan, blending cutting-edge technology with traditional shamanic practices to create a model that could be both a refuge for wildlife and a spiritual haven. One evening, as the sun set over the newly designated reserve, Tom felt a profound sense of accomplishment and connection. He had ventured far from where he had started, both in distance and in understanding. The land around him, with its ancient spirits and untamed beauty, was now under protection. But more importantly, it had imparted new wisdom about the delicate balance between man and nature, a lesson he would carry forward in his ongoing mission. As the new reserve in Mongolia began to flourish, Tom observed its influence ripple across his network, inspiring a renewed vigor in the global nexus for mystical conservation. The successful integration of shamanic practices and modern conservation techniques in Mongolia became a beacon, highlighting the power of blending ancient wisdom with contemporary science. This model sparked interest in similar integrations globally, particularly in regions with rich indigenous histories. Tom, now seen as a pioneer in this unique field of conservation, took the lessons learned from Mongolia to further refine his approach. He initiated the Cultural Custodians program, a key component of the global nexus that aimed to involve local communities directly in the conservation efforts, training them to be both protectors of their natural heritage and ambassadors of their cultural spiritual traditions. This program kicked off in Indonesia, where Tom collaborated with Dayak elders in Borneo. The Dayak communities had a profound spiritual connection with the rainforest, viewing it as a living, breathing entity. Tom worked with the elders to map out sacred sites and develop ecotourism plans that allowed visitors to experience these sites through guided tours that were respectful and informative. These tours not only provided a source of income for the local communities, but also educated the public about the spiritual value of the rainforests and their critical role in global ecology. Meanwhile, in Africa, Tom set his sights on the expansive savannas of Kenya. Here, he partnered with Maasai leaders to establish a reserve that celebrated and protected the spiritual landscapes that were central to Maasai culture. Together, they developed wildlife corridors that respected migratory patterns sacred to the Maasai, ensuring that both the natural and spiritual ecosystems remained intact. Each of these projects was supported by a sophisticated data collection network that Tom had developed. This network utilized satellite imaging and ground sensors to monitor environmental changes in real time, providing data that was used not only for scientific research, but also to validate the ecological impact of spiritual practices on conservation. The data clearly showed that areas managed under the Cultural Custodians program exhibited healthier ecosystems and higher biodiversity levels. Tom's influence also extended into the digital realm. He launched an online platform called EcoWeb, a global forum where conservationists, spiritual leaders, and the public could share experiences, ideas, and successes. EcoWeb quickly grew into a vibrant community, sparking discussions that bridged cultural divides and fostered a deeper global understanding of ecological and spiritual stewardship. As the global nexus expanded, Tom faced challenges that tested his resolve and capabilities. The biggest of these was navigating the political landscapes of countries where environmental protection clashed with governmental and corporate interests. However, Tom's growing network provided a powerful collective voice that advocated for the integration of spiritual and ecological conservation at international policy forums. One such forum, held in Geneva, brought together environmental policymakers from around the world. Tom delivered a keynote address, presenting compelling data and heartfelt narratives from the global nexus. His speech, enriched with stories of mystical encounters and community transformations, moved the audience and influenced several governments to reconsider their environmental strategies. Back at the Mongolian reserve, as Tom watched a sunset paint the steppes with colors of fire and gold, he felt a profound connection to the earth and its myriad guardians. He had witnessed the growth of a movement that wove together the threads of spirituality and science, creating a tapestry rich with diversity and strength. The expanding reach of the global nexus had now brought Tom into the intricate dance of global environmental politics, a realm where every step forward was met with resistance from entrenched interests. However, the unique blend of spiritual reverence and scientific rigor that defined his approach continued to gain traction, drawing supporters from unexpected corners of the globe. In this chapter of his journey, Tom focused on forging alliances that could influence international environmental policies. One of his strategic moves was to partner with the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. Together, they launched the Gaia Guardians Initiative, a global campaign aimed at recognizing and protecting spiritual and ecological sites through UNESCO World Heritage status. The initiative kicked off with a landmark conference in Nairobi, where Tom and his team presented case studies from the global Nexus reserves. These examples illustrated the profound impact of integrating spiritual stewardship into conservation practices. The conference attracted a diverse audience, including policymakers, indigenous leaders, environmental scientists, and representatives from non-governmental organizations. To strengthen his case, Tom introduced a new technological tool developed by his team, the Biospiritual Mapping System, BSMS. This advanced GIS platform combined ecological data with spiritual significance metrics, providing a comprehensive overview of areas where biological diversity intersected with cultural and spiritual importance. The BSMS became a pivotal resource in identifying new sites for the Gaia Guardians initiative, helping to prioritize areas for immediate protection. Amid these successes, Tom encountered significant challenges. A proposed mining project in the heart of the Congo Basin threatened one of the newly identified Gaia Guardian sites. This area was not only ecologically rich but also considered sacred by local tribes. Tom mobilized a response by leveraging the global Nexus network, initiating a worldwide campaign that highlighted the potential devastation the mining project could cause. The campaign utilized a blend of traditional media and digital activism with virtual reality experiences that simulated the environmental and spiritual impact of the mining project. These immersive presentations were showcased at major environmental summits, bringing the issue to the forefront of international discussions. The pressure culminated in a high-stakes meeting at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where Tom and a delegation of indigenous leaders presented their case. The compelling combination of hard scientific data and powerful personal testimonies led to a groundbreaking decision. The mining license was revoked, and the area was designated as a protected site under the Gaia Guardians initiative. Emboldened by this victory, Tom expanded his efforts to other threatened regions. In Southeast Asia, he tackled illegal logging by partnering with local enforcement agencies and providing them with satellite imagery and real-time surveillance capabilities, greatly enhancing their ability to monitor and respond to illegal activities. Meanwhile, Tom's personal connection to the mystical realm deepened. During a visit to a newly established reserve in the Australian outback, known for its powerful ley lines and Aboriginal spiritual significance, Tom experienced a profound spiritual encounter. Under the guidance of an Aboriginal elder, he participated in a Dreamtime walkabout, connecting with the spirit of the land in a way that transcended his previous experiences. This encounter enriched his understanding of the spiritual dimensions of conservation, reinforcing his commitment to his life's work. As the chapter closes, the global Nexus stands as a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of uniting diverse cultures and disciplines in the fight to protect our planet. The network continues to grow, weaving new threads into the fabric of global conservation efforts, each thread strengthened by the deep roots of spiritual respect and scientific understanding. As the global nexus for mystical conservation matured into a robust global movement, Tom recognized the importance of sustainability, not just in ecological terms but also in maintaining the momentum and vision of the initiative. The world was changing, and with these shifts came new challenges and opportunities for conservation. Tom decided that the future of the Nexus depended on nurturing the next generation of leaders who could carry forward the torch of this unique blend of spirituality and science. To this end, Tom established the Nexus Academy, a specialized institution designed to train young conservationists in the integrated approach that had made the global Nexus a success. Located in the heart of the Canadian Rockies, a site chosen for its stunning natural beauty and spiritual significance, the Academy offered courses that ranged from environmental science and policy to spiritual ecology and traditional wisdom practices. The curriculum was groundbreaking, combining rigorous scientific training with deep cultural immersion. Students were taught not only by scientists and policy experts, but also by shamans, monks, and other spiritual practitioners, providing a holistic understanding of the intricate connections between all forms of life and the energies that bind them. Tom's vision for the Academy was to create a community where innovation flourished. One of the flagship projects born from this environment was the Eco-Spirit Tech Hub, a research center within the Academy that focused on developing new technologies to aid conservation efforts. This included drones that planted seeds in deforested areas, biodegradable tracking sensors for wildlife monitoring, and AI systems that could predict ecological shifts based on both scientific data and historical spiritual occurrences. Moreover, the Academy became a focal point for international collaboration. Tom invited experts and leaders from around the world to participate in symposiums and workshops, fostering a global dialogue that enriched the Academy's programs. These events were also streamed online, making them accessible to a worldwide audience and spreading the message of the Nexus further than ever before. As the Academy grew, so did the alumni network, with graduates returning to their home countries to establish local branches of the global Nexus. These branches adapted the core principles of the Nexus to their local contexts, creating a tapestry of interconnected reserves and conservation projects that spanned continents. In addition to his work with the Academy, Tom continued his personal journey of spiritual and ecological exploration. He embarked on a series of pilgrimages to ancient sites around the world, from the stone circles of Stonehenge to the sacred mountains of Tibet. Each journey was documented and shared through a series of documentaries, which served both as educational tools and as a source of inspiration, illustrating the profound connection between humanity and the Earth. One of Tom's most profound experiences during these travels occurred in the Amazon rainforest, where he participated in a ceremony with indigenous shamans. During the ceremony, Tom had a vision of a vast network of light, each point a person or place that had been touched by the global Nexus. This vision reinforced his belief in the interconnectedness of all things and the potential for collective human effort to bring about positive change. As the decade drew to a close, Tom looked out over the grounds of the Nexus Academy, filled with young, passionate individuals eager to make their mark on the world. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment and optimism. The seeds he had planted years ago had grown into a forest of hope, a living testament to the power of uniting diverse voices and visions for the sake of our planet.